What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings of the Best Served podcast here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Exciting little bonus content that we have here. We are hosting a panel talking about the unveiling of Moringa Beer. We have a great lineup of guests with us. Mariko Gifford, as well as Chris Gifford from Moringa for Life. We have Danii Oliver, Island to Island Brewery, Darren Santos with Rainbow Moringa, and Betsy Good with Four Corners Brewing Company. We've brought together beer. We've brought together Moringa. We are going to be tasting, as far as we know, the first ever Moringa beer from Island to Island. Danii Oliver brewed this beer up. And so we're going to be tasting this beer. So for the next 20, 25 minutes, we'll be with you. We'll be talking beer. We'll be talking fermentation. We'll talk collaboration. And so I want to start with having Mariko talk a little bit about why she wanted to bring a Moringa beer out into the world, and start there. We'll have Danii talk a little bit about brewing the beer, the recipe, and then we'll geek out a little bit, taste the actual beer, and talk about the opportunity to coalesce Moringa, which I'm guessing a lot of you don't know what that is. Now we'll unveil that as well in a second, and bringing Moringa and botanicals and the farm, the garden, to the brewery. We're excited about that notion. So no further ado, Mariko, why don't you tell us why Moringa beer? Why did you bring this project to light?
Well, there's a number of reasons. The first is that it's a connection, a deep connection I have with you and your expertise in brewing and your connection to the hospitality industry and all of this work that you've been doing in these past, especially the past few months. But this was an idea I had many years ago before you were really connected into Moringa and with me, and it just fell off of you like nothing. It's like, no, we're not doing that. But then the world changed, and that's one of the things that I've experienced in my time with Moringa, is that sometimes you have to wait for the world to change, and then there's the opportunity right in front of you. And when I started talking with you about it, and on you, being on your podcast and dealing with the hospitality industry and the issue of health, I realized this is a really amazing way to introduce it to a whole echelon of people who would never find me any other way. And that was a really big piece for me when I was doing a little video clip for Danii before we had the opportunity to meet, when you were doing a fundraiser. I realized that there's a whole way of dealing with Moringa that has to do with the original way that beer was made, with herbs and by women. And so it took me into that kind of historical, original way that beer was made. And to have that be the opportunity that we can now connect and collaborate with Moringa. And the way that you work with your beer process is the same very heart-connected way I work with Moringa. And so it was like, it couldn't be a better combination, a better collaboration. And just in this very short time, we've gotten to know each other just very deeply, and you've become a part of our family. And that's really the essence of what Moringa for Life is about, is connecting us to our ancestry, our roots, and especially our family in our life now. So many arenas for me that this became just incredible. I'm just so absolutely thrilled. So, but I could go on.
We buried the lead a little bit. Mariko is my mother. So this has been coming for about 22 years since she started Moringa, making capsules by hand in the garage when I was in high school, where there was just green powder everywhere. And like a punk kid, I want to have nothing to do with it. And it's interesting how it's come full circle. It took 22 years, but we're here. There is Moringa beer, and I am excited. So mission accomplished, at least on that front. So want to talk to Danii for just a second. And please, everybody watching, give us comments, questions, anything. Very interested what you know, what you want to know about Moringa, about brewing, how those are coming together. If you're a brewer, home brewer, professional brewer, how you can bring this product or other thoughtfully curated products into your brew house. So please do engage with us. We'll pop up comments. We'll try and weave those into the conversation. Danii, when Mariko said Moringa beer, the very first 74 seconds after I got the text from her, I texted you and said, if there's anybody that is going to be game to brew a Moringa beer, it's you. You grow Moringa. You're in it already. We've had you on the show. We've talked about it, and we went fast. I mean, this is not even a month ago that I think maybe a month ago that the first text was sent, and we're here today with this beer. So I love how it came together and it went really fast. Let's talk about why you were on board to do the beer quickly, and then let's talk about what we can expect from this recipe specifically.
I was on board to do the beer because it was a project that I had been dreaming about doing since before I came out here to this land. And I had been using Moringa in my juice bar. I had been contemplating using it in my brewery and fermentation. Every time customers walked into my tap room, it was the way I greeted them. I simply gave them a Moringa seed, a cup of Soleil water, and it was how we said hello to all of our guests. We imparted nutrients and energy onto them so that they can enjoy the rest of their day in a way they didn't know possible when their body was fully nourished through something as simple and small as a Moringa seed. And so that is something that I've been thinking about for the longest. When I came out here, the first thing that I did was put Moringa seeds in the ground. I actually did ground, paper towel, water, and little tiny cups. Tried everything to see what it would take to get it to grow. And it was the first most important thing that I needed to put on my land. And so, of course, as soon as you guys called and said, hey, let's do this, I ran outside and I started taking pictures of the crop because I wanted you guys to see how serious my mind had already been, how serious my spirit had already been on creating a fermented Moringa beverage, and to let you guys know that you chose the right woman to work with.
You were game right away, the energy right out of the gate. And then so there's also another piece of content I want people to search out for if this is of interest, of value to you, where Danii and I actually gave everyone an inside peek into kind of the development of a collaboration recipe. So look to Moringa for Life's Facebook page, YouTube page, and you can find the Moringa beer recipe development video, about 20 minutes of us just rapping back and forth about, I'm thinking about this. What about this style? Do we want it to be a botanical beer? Do we want it to be a beer that's more in the craft beer spectrum as it exists today with some Moringa? And so it's an interesting dynamic how we got to this recipe. So at a very high level, we'll touch on all the nuance within it, but what are we drinking here today? What is this Moringa beer that you've brewed for us?
So this right here is the very first rendition of a Moringa beer. It's actually a honey beer that is part of the herb and spice category. I'm trying to develop a style all its own with like Moringa specifications. But for right now, in terms of recognizing this beer on the market, it is a honey beer in the spice and herb category.
That's great. And when Dani's talking categorization, we're talking about Great American Beer Festival, World Beer Cup, Homebrew Competition, American Homebrew. These would be the categorizations that you would enter a beer to have it stylistically judged. And so just kind of the awareness that puts us into an expectation. If you're on the beer style, there's certain attributes that we would expect from a honey beer, from a spiced beer, from a herbaceous beer. So excited about that. All right. No more talking. Now we need to taste some beer. So we're going to do this very much like the Indy 500. Racers, start your engines. Drinkers, open your bottles and let's pour some beer.
Hey, y'all remind me which color cap the Moringa beer is, please.
The green one.
Green.
Green. Thank you.
All right. Let me get this on screen if I can. Yes.
Cheers, everyone. Oh, I'll wait for you guys.
Yeah, let's do a quick cheers.
You can see how excited I am.
Well, Mariko, you know, I make fun of her sometimes. She does a lot of blessings, but why don't you give us a blessing to this beer?
Oh, I can just feel the energy of it. wow, it's quite remarkable. Just to from the harvest of that, from the harvest of this moringa, the intention was sent, and for this end use, and it's fully present. So this is something that, as a first experience for us to really connect to the plant, see how we are guided, and what the journey of this is for us. It's in our hands, literally, to garner everything that needs to be done to really bring this to the masses, so that there's that entry level, this gateway into Moringa, and that opens a whole journey. So it's a blessing to just say, let's combine all of our intention to see the end use of this as the thousands upon thousands of people who are going to be nourished by this.
All right. Well, cheers to that, everybody. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching,
Cheers.
everyone for being on the panel. Cheers. All right. Let's get in here.
Mm. Wow.
Mm.
Wow.
Cheers is right. Okay. I want to come to Betsy, professional brewer, right? You've had your schnoz like I have in so many beers.
Wow.
Let's touch on this real quick. First impressions of Moringa Beer Batch 1.0.
Oh, first of all, I love the color.
Beautiful
It's
color.
this beautiful golden color. You smell it. You get a lot of botanicals.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of honey, some citrus, botanical. The carb is nice, not overly high, but it's nice, like prickle in your tongue without being overwhelming. And it's incredibly flavorful while still being very light and refreshing. That's really, really good. That's perfect out there. I've been sweating and brewing all day, and that is wonderful.
I completely agree. The carbonation is very nice. It's a little bit of a gusher. So it definitely, there's a ton of aroma because you got a lot of that carbonation releasing. We do have a little bit of particulate, which I think is really on brand for this. You can just see little tiny flecks of moringa in there, at least in mine. I can see some little flecks of green in there. The honey is super present, but there's a ton of minerality, and it finishes a little bit sweet, but it does not have a lot of cloying sweetness on the finish. So I'm a big fan of that. Darren, you've been so patient, my friend. All right, I want to come to you.
I'm loving it so far. You know, I'm a fan of you know, Belgian white beers like Garden and you know, does this count as a mead, being a honey beer, or
Not technically a mead.
Not quite.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
It's 40% as opposed to 60%.
You know, the color is beautiful. It's you know, it's instantly recognizable as a beer. I didn't know, like, you know, how the, you know, addition of moringa would you know, result in the beer, and you know, it tastes great. I love it.
Yeah, so for you,
I love seeing the specs of moringa, and it, you know, is a reminder that it is special, that it's in there, and yeah, I'm really excited to have more of this.
Yeah, and so for you, Darren, being kind of on the moringa side of this, you know, what is your expectation of moringa? Like, give us a little bit when you're thinking about moringa, when you're working with moringa, when you're eating moringa, when you're drinking moringa. What are some of the attributes that you look for? What are some of the things you're trying to balance out? Like, give us a little bit of your thoughts on moringa.
Yeah, you know, when you eat moringa straight from the tree raw, you know, it's got a really spicy kind of horseradishy kind of flavor, and you know, right off the bat, you know, I'm feeling a, you know, really earthy flavor of the back of my tongue that's just reminiscent of yeah, just some, it's yeah, you definitely get a flavor of moringa there, right at the base of my tongue, and so it's really exciting to see this plant come to us in a beer form now, and the innovation that your mother and Moringa for Life is doing with beer. So it's really exciting to see that, and to see something that comes from my heritage to come forward in something new and exciting like this. In the Philippines, we have only a handful of beers that are from the Philippines, and to see a beer have an ingredient that comes from our land is like next level. So
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely. This is something important. We're bringing together a few different disciplines. We're bringing together culturally, to your point. I think that craft beer is so American these days. And to bring Moringa something from, from the Philippines, I think is amazing. So I'm excited about that notion. All right. We once again buried the lead because I wanted to talk about the beer a lot. I wanted to talk about the reason for Moringa. Now I just want to talk about Moringa for just a second. Moringa, the miracle tree, the most nutritious plant ever tested, full stop, the end. Mariko, I know this is difficult for you. Quickly, so we can keep drinking beer, Moringa, like, what do people need to know about Moringa besides, again, the punchline is the most nutritious plant ever tested? But what a couple other things you want people to know about Moringa?
It's really easy to have it in your everyday food. And, beer is just such an example of that. And especially these days, we have so many varieties of beer. But my interest is that it's non-threatening now to have it as a beer, and that people will really look into bringing this into their everyday food. All the different foods that they could be using, like in the Philippines, you have it in everything, and you can eat this fresh. And on our webinars, which are Saturday now through August at 7 p.m. Pacific time, I'm going to be going over the uses. So we're going to do also foods and drinks. And Danii does a lot of different things with the dried, and she uses the seed when she's doing this. So it doesn't have to be fresh where you are. You can use it as dried. So it's very accessible. It's very available. And, that's really what I'm looking for, is that people can get their food security by having that plant growing, because we want everybody to have a plant in their backyard and be able to have the access to this high nutritious plant and use it every day.
All right, Danii, I want to come over to you. This recipe, you brewed a pretty damn good beer from, us just going back and forth and kind of not knowing anything about. We were very open. We didn't know where we want to start. It wasn't an IPA because that's super hot, and so we can catch the craft beer nerds and like get them just sneakily to start consuming some Moringa. Do we want to go straight heavy botanical, where Moringa has quite a bit of bitterness to it? It definitely has a long tail finish of bitterness. Could we accent that, or was it going to be hard to compete with? So just at a high level, the next step here is getting this into a production style size batch, and then seeing where it can go from there, entering in the competition, collaborating and bringing other brewers into the fold like Betsy, and seeing like how can we take this if this is an ingredient that finds its way into craft beer. So what are your thoughts as you think to scale this? Where's it at in your head?
Honestly, I would say that before we started this panel, it was in a completely different place than when it is now, having listened to everyone going around.
Right.
I have to say that at first I felt like, darn, we didn't hit our mark. But one of the reasons why I didn't want to be part of the panel originally is because I was thinking about a mark. And I think that this project was very important that there be no mark. Yes, we wanted to be very recognizable as beer, and we wanted to have Moringa in it. But I wanted to not have any expectations. Whatever nature gives us, it's what it gives us. And the reason why I think I felt a little unhappy was because of the spiciness that came through, the fact that it's coming off like a saison, and it has a lot of esters in it. And listening to Darren and eating the Moringa fresh off the branch, I'm like, wait a minute, no, this is Moringa that's coming through. We didn't not meet the mark. It's on the mark, and what I'm tasting is Moringa. Mm-hmm. And I was comparing it to the spagyric for the flavor, but now like having tasted the beer, tasted the moringa back to back in this little tasting that I was doing, it's on mark, and it's what nature provided, and so I am happy with it. I did use base malt instead of Pilsner malt. I really do want to use Pilsner malt. I think that it will benefit from an even lighter malt as our base so that the moringa could come through. Like you said, we were trying to get IPA heads in, people who would appreciate that bitter flavor in. And while I think that we're getting it in this version, I still do want to try it with the Pilsner malt so that we have a nice, clean, crisp base for the moringa to sit on top of. But otherwise, I mean, the next step, I'm ready for it, you know. I'm ready for this big boy into production.
I literally scribbled down one note and it says saison. It's the only thing that I wrote down. Everything else was just, you know, I'm waiting for it to evolve. Like from the first to the fifth sip, it's definitely changing already. It's still really, really young. You can taste it's still a little bit like green, so to speak. So I think it'll mature, and I'm interested in a bottle 2 weeks from now. So I'm fascinated in that. But saison, absolutely. So I think there's an opportunity now that we know where the moringa, the honey, wants to go on its own when kind of we're not messing with it too much. I think there's an opportunity to think about that. Betsy, I want to come over to you. As a brewer outside of kind of this project, you haven't been in the weeds with us this whole time. This is your first kind of foray into it. I'm sure the first moringa beer that you've had. Give us a little bit critical of, I like this. However, if I were to do a collaboration and get in on this, I'd love to see it go here, just so we can kind of think about another path that this style of beer or that this botanical could take us on as a brewer.
I like the description of this being a beer that hopheads would really enjoy. It has some bitterness. I think that I could tolerate more bitterness. I love the saison quality, and it's citrusy and fruity, but I love more bitterness on it. I have some brewing questions, if that's okay, for Danii.
Yeah, please do.
Danii,
let's geek out a little bit.
Danii, did you use any hop in this brew, or is this more of a gruit style, more of a traditional?
So there are hops in the beer. We used Calypso, my all-time favorite, in homage to my heritage.
Yes.
We used a little bit of Citra, and we used lemon drop, both in the whirlpool and dry hopped with the moringa. And I used the hops, one, to make sure that it was protected, and then two, I used it with the moringa in the dry hop, just because we were using fresh moringa that had its own things on it from nature that we weren't pasteurizing out. So I wanted to make sure that that dry hop addition of moringa kept the beer safe.
Great question.
That was part of my next question as well. When did moringa go in? Was it only as a dry hop, or did you add it in the boil as well?
So we actually mashed with it so that we could steep it like a tea. And it did get boiled, unpasteurized, obviously, but then we added it back again in the fermenter about 6 days in. So we did it pretty much like a dry hop addition.
Yeah, and I think
I have one more question, if that's okay.
Yeah, and I want to qualify what Danii just said. I think it's very important to think about moringa because in its dried form and its fresh form, it expresses very differently for sure. One of the things, the biggest thing I get is a ton of vibrant, more citrus notes, more pithy lime peel, and that definitely goes away a lot more, and you get more of the horseradish, a little bit of that like root, kind of like you're gnawing on slightly under peeled horseradish is what I would say. So it's got a little bit of that earthy griminess to it. So it's interesting because I think you get the complexity by using both. So I would highly recommend a moringa beer, always including dry and fresh. And now you see the call out. We need a homebrew recipe for this. There's going to be some demand, Danii, just so you know. So, but Betsy, one more question. Yeah, what do you got?
Yeah, my last question is about the quality of the beer. And so I'm curious about yeast and where the esters come from, if you're willing to share that with us.
I used the London Fog. I think it was the 1028, the one that finishes dry. I really, I wanted to go for a sweet tea kind of flavor, sweet lemon tea, Arnold Parma. But I wanted it still to first be approachable by beer nerds. So I went with the dry strain so that we wouldn't end up with something sweet, even though once we did take it out to dry hop it, at that point in time, it tasted really good, more on the mead side. And so, yeah, it was the London Fog. I believe it was the 1028, the dry finishing London Fog strain. And I think we're getting a lot of these esters, one, because it literally is the flavor of the moringa, that spiciness, the reason why it's coming off like a Saison very much comes from the moringa, because the London Fog, for me, I find it to be a very nice, clean finishing yeast. Maybe I'm off. I know my taste buds are different from different people, but the moringa definitely added a lot of its own character to it. And I also think that we get a lot of esters because of the temperature at which it was fermented. I would like to hold it at 65 degrees. It is Texas. I did brew and ferment it in a farmhouse. So temperatures did fluctuate a bit. I did my best to control it as much as possible. But I am curious to see how it comes out at a steady 65 with a good 38 degree crash when it's ready to condition.
So for all the non-beer nerds out there, I will translate a few things for you. London Fog is a derivative of Boddington's yeast, which is what you'll see mostly used in hazy IPAs and East Coast style IPAs, as it allows for it allows for the dry hopping to bond to the yeast so that you get more of a creamy mouthfeel, you get more of a haze, it doesn't drop out and clear out. And esters are the fruity notes that you find in beer. The other character you'll hear discussed by us beer nerds is phenolic characters, and then those tend to be more of the spicy notes, most often something you're trying to avoid in beer. So a couple qualifiers there.
That was the other reason why I used the London Fog, because I wanted to have the haziness in the beer without adding wheat. Because, haze is another trend right now that we wanted to make sure that people would be welcoming of the beer.
All right, we're going to wrap here in a second, but I want to answer a couple people's question. Darren, you've been very patient once again. I know Mariko is the expert, but I know you have some chops as well when it comes to growing and cultivating and all that. So can we grow in the cold climate? It can get -3 to 7 sometimes at night. Would love to have this beer available in Australia. So growing moringa in colder climates. Any advice there?
I know that a lot of the people that grow in colder climates tend to bring their trees in during the winter and kind of store them, winter them. Which you probably would have to do in some of the colder climates, and then bring them back out during spring, early spring, and let them start to bloom again. That's what I would kind of recommend.
The answer is yes. You're just going to have to figure out a slightly different path than just putting it outside. But definitely track down Darren at Rainbow Moringa, Mariko at Moringa for Life. They absolutely are wealths of knowledge for sure. And one last question here. Want to get thrilled to catch this live chat from Perth. Apparently we're really hot in Australia right now. I love it. Thank you so much. Have 35 trees in my yard for only 8 to 12 months old. Congratulations. I'll let you, Mariko, finish us off here. Australia, talk to them for a second. Apparently you have an audience down there, but just take us home here. Last thoughts on this as a whole.
Yeah, this is a really important piece here, is to find your growing season for moringa. And we've changed our time for our webinar so that people in Australia could attend. So you want to know that your growing season for moringa is when you can plant out cucumbers and tomatoes. It's a tropical plant, so you want to mimic that environment. So your growing season is during that time. And the rest of the time, you're going to be bringing it indoor, just like Darren said, because you have to protect it. Because it's tropical, it needs that tropical heat and warmth. So it's going to go dormant, but you're going to bring it in, and then you're going to take it out and you're going to, mimic that cucumber and tomato season. That's your moringa season. So everybody has a time they can plant out moringa. Just figure out when it is. Reach out to us. We're doing webinars all the time. Our webinars will be they're recorded and they'll be on our website and YouTube. And it's all about how to grow moringa, and especially all around the world. We want to support everybody who can possibly be, grow moringa. It's like find a way, and we are there to support you and help you answer all your questions, because I've seen it all, I've done it all. And Darren is one of my graduates of the moringa course, and I'm just really thrilled to have him really stepping in and participating with us. We're going to be doing a lot more projects together with Darren.
Good. And speaking of a lot more projects, there will be a lot more to come. We are just planting the seeds. I'm not very good at farming, gardening metaphors, but I'll go with we're planting the seeds today. And this was a great with Danii. Amazing job starting out. You've literally pushed yourself into a completely new category, and I think we have a lot to build on here, because this is a really great beer, and already my wheels are turning, and I know the other brewers' wheels are turning. Like, there is so much upward trajectory that this beer, this project, the ethos of what we're trying to instill in this type of collaboration, there's going to be a lot more to come. So I appreciate everybody, Mariko and Chris. Chris, I know you got to taste the beer. You didn't get a lot of airtime, but I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, I just want to say to Danii, you really captured the essence of the moringa plant. Waking up every morning and walking down into the moringa field and smelling the earth, smelling the plant, the sun on the plant. You captured that. The plant came through, and you captured it, the essence of it. So I just love it. It's really excellent. Well done. Thank you.
Chris, way to come on with the mic drop at the end. That was beautiful. Well done.
I just wanted to say that since the day we started this project, since we started talking approximately 30 days ago, my moringa has grown 30 inches.
There you go.
Feeling the love. It's feeling the energy that's going on right now.
Yeah.
All right. We gotta wrap this up, everybody. All right. Thank you to Chris, Mariko, Danii, Betsy, and Darren. Amazing job. Thank you so much for participating, for bringing your insights. Really grateful for the conversation. And we have a lot more to come. So look out for Moringa Beer and more projects around it, as we think there's a massive opportunity and need for us to bring this plant into the craft beer community. That's all for tonight. Thank you once again, Jensen Cummings with Best Served Podcast. I'm grateful for the opportunity. Thanks all. Cheers.
Cheers.